a strain, whatever you want, you can get. Indica sativa, never rolling plain Jane. I know some people, if you want, drive 50, we ain't gon' cop any. Little mama got plenty, so many strain, puffing the flame, nothing but dro. One for the brain, one for the body, one for the soul. Running with strange, keeping the party under control. Up, away, flying, how far are we gonna go? Smoke team in the building, got 'em is what the deal is. Recognize coming with Burns, Felix, but film the county boy, got the liquor. Castle was on a fader, Stevie came with the greenery, mixing multiple flavors, whatever you want, homie. Tell me when to say when. How about you and your friends? Come get with me and my friends and keep it real with me, girl. I don't wanna pretend like this is a new thing. Really, that's what it's been like. Mr. Grow It has been deleted. Unfortunately, Instagram has given him the hammer. And because of that, he's no longer around on his main account. However, he has decided to make another Instagram account. And earlier this week, he made a post and he said this.
After seeing this, yes, this is my new Instagram account. I've got a ton of new content coming up that I'm going to be posting to this page. I'm really excited for what I have to show you. Hit that follow button and share this so we can rebuild this community. Thank you so much for the support. Catch you in the next one.
So that is his account. It's can you give the deets there, Mrs. P? It's I think it's Mr._Growit.
Yep.
So make sure you're typing in the correct alias, the correct handle, so that you get the right one. It's Mr._Growit. We already know that Meta / Instagram / Facebook / YouTube has kind of been on the hammer lately and has gotten rid of a lot of great accounts. And unfortunately, Mr. Growit was one of those accounts, and we need to make sure that we rally together. Head on over there, let him know that we appreciate his mission. Hit that follow button so that we can help build up that account again. It's the least we could do for the man who invented VPD. Okay? It's something that I feel like we should take very, very seriously. So, much love to Mr. Growit. I remember what it was like getting deleted a few years ago. It is not a great feeling. It is actually quite deflating. It takes up all the wind out of your sails. But for him to have the perseverance and resilience to create another account and to push it forward and to continue spreading the great word of I commend him. And I think the least that we could do is give him a shout out so that he can kind of build that bridge again, build that platform back up.
Imagine being able to grow your own wheat from home, completely legit, with just a few clicks. You buy the plants online, and a company cultivates them for you in real greenhouses. When the harvest is sold, you get a cut of the profits. The cannabis market is booming, and the returns are huge, massive even. So you keep investing, possibly spending your entire savings. And then, one day, it's all gone. That's exactly what happened to thousands of clients who invested in a firm called Juicy Fields. And the story behind all this is just wild. A flashy, revolutionary startup sponsoring international cannabis expos, a promo video starring a German rapper packed with hidden clues, a CEO with an Ivy League degree who barely speaks English, a business address leading to a castle and a group of fake aristocrats, alleged criminals trying and failing to smoke joints through the slits in their Guy Fawkes masks, hundreds of millions in losses, investigations all across Europe, and a mysterious mastermind secretly pulling the strings.
Money, green. Started with a dream. Now we getting rich now, man. Money, green. Straight out of
We've already done this video. I remember it now. Oops. It's a good thing I be fucking paying attention though, right? Probably. Juicy. Y'all know to go check out that big homie over at DJ Is for non-copyrighted music you can use in your backgrounds. Make sure you go ahead and throw that homie some respect and buy him a coffee at least. At least drop 5 on him, 5, it's like 5 crosses do lit, go hit her up for some music, right? Appreciate that.
place for you to stay. In the garden, by the door, in the bedroom, on the floor. Remember me when you're far away. I'll always have a place for you to stay. In the middle of the night, I'm gonna be there till the morning light. Remember me when you're far away. I'll always have a place for you to stay. In the garden, by the door, in the bedroom, on the floor. Remember me when you're far away. I'll always have a place for you to stay. In the middle of the night, I'm gonna be there till the morning light. Remember me when you're far away. I'll always have a place for you to stay. In the garden, by the door, in the bedroom, on the floor. Remember me when you're far away. I'll always have a place for you to stay. In the middle of the night, I'm gonna be there till the morning light.
If you have ever flipped your plants into flower and watched them suddenly double in size, you are not alone. In this video, we're going to show you what's going on with the stretch and what you can do to keep it under control. Before we do, this video is brought to you by Real Grow Lab. If you are done taking bad advice from random growers online, you got to check out Real Grow Lab. It is a private community with growers with actual experience. Come on, get some advice that will actually help your plants. Go to realgrowlab.com. It's completely free to join. And come on, Hasi, let's do this one, huh?
Okay, I always think this is weird because I'm cutting back the lights, and all of a sudden my plant starts stretching. What the heck is going on?
Okay. I mean, it's hormonal. We'll start with that, right? All this stuff is hormonal, especially when you start clicking the lights back. But yeah, let's talk about what happens in veg. Plants are growing really tall, right? They've got all those auxins and gibberellins that are keep the plant growing. It's trying to grow big, tall plants for survival, right?
Okay, but I feel like maybe I'm hallucinating. I feel like I see an actual jump in growth right when I switch the lights back.
Yeah, it just keeps going is what it is. Those hormones, what happens during flowering takes a couple weeks until that flower generating hormone takes over. Before that though, you've got the plant wanting to grow big and tall. So those auxins and those gibberellins, those hormones, they don't just turn off. As soon as the lights go to 12:12, it takes them 10 days, almost sometimes 2 weeks until they turn off and they get the message that they're not growing tall plants anymore. That's really what I think the stretch is about. And whether you're in flowering or in veg, no matter what, the plant does have to fight for light, or at least it needs that light and will stretch towards the light. So if you don't have enough light, or specifically if your light's really high up, that plant will stretch, just unrelated to hormones. It's just going to stretch as a survival mechanism to get to that light.
So there might be, and I'm not sure about this, it might be the plant is like, hey, I'm getting less light. I need to get closer to the light.
Sure. I mean, the light is the energy, so it's certainly going to grow towards that source of light. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the problems that growers run into when they have that stretch.
Morning, Sue. Good to see you.
as
How
they
you doing?
flip into flower.
Yeah, I mean, uneven canopy is a big
I'm gonna go
problem.
check out the
You have
bud
something
falls.
growing into the lights. It's getting too much light, which
Appreciate
isn't
you
good
coming
for
by
that
saying
bud.
hi.
I've seen buds bleach before. Yeah, there's a sweet spot, and it's right around, I don't know, 1,000 to 1,300 ppfd, I would say.
Well, and if I've got a plant that's stretching, even if the top is getting the right amount of light,
Sure.
the rest of the plant is not.
Yeah, don't forget the light dissipates very quickly in intensity. So if you've got one bud that is getting the most intense light, up 3 inches or 6 inches from the canopy, and don't forget also that bud can block or can shade the rest of the canopy, so that now it's just getting, the rest of the canopy is getting very minimal, or it's just getting a lot of that good light blocked. Yeah, even canopy, you've heard me talk about that over and over again. If you can even out that canopy, you can get the same amount of light, throughout the canopy. Maybe you get 11, 12, if you get 11 or 1200 ppfd, you're doing pretty darn good there. But if you can get that throughout the entire canopy, you are going to get a lot of really good quality bud.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How do we
Yeah.
get an even canopy while our plants are wanting to stretch?
Sure. All right, cool. So the first one is really easy. Just make sure you got enough light. Make sure your plants aren't stretching towards the light. So lower the light down. Your manufacturer gave you a proper height above canopy. It might be 15, might be 24 inches, depends on the kind of light you're running. But yeah, increasing or perfecting the distance, making sure you got the right distance over canopy. That would be huge. And then just making sure you've got them dialed up high enough that you're getting the right DLI, the right amount of light intensity on there.
Right, because I just turned 4 or 6 hours of light less.
Yeah.
Now I need to figure out how to make sure that those plants aren't starving for light and stretching. What do I do?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. You gotta dial it up, right? As your plants are going from 18 to 12 hours of daylight, you've got to slowly dial it up to match that intensity, to match that DLI. You're getting less hours, so you have to dial up the intensity, right? And another trick that is pretty cool, they call it DIF, D-I-F, but it's the nighttime and daytime differential. The difference between your daytime temps and your nighttime temps. The bigger the difference, the bigger the swing, the more the plants are going to stretch. If you keep your daytime and nighttime temperatures very similar, that's how you reduce stretch, or that's one really good way to reduce stretch.
And naturally, and in the tent,
Sure.
you do want to keep them just a tiny bit cooler during night, which is kind of easy if the lights are off. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, that's natural. It's very natural. That's how it's done. Equal. You don't want to have the nighttime temperatures warmer than the day. It's just kind of weird. But the temperature differential affects the stretch. So if you can have it very even, not much of a differential at all, you'll reduce the stretch. Okay, and the last thing, and this one's important, I don't know why I put it last, but is training. Training, whether you're super cropping, which is high stress training, you're actually bending the branch, or if you're just weaving those branches in through like a trellis or something like
Good
that.
to see you. How you doing?
The auxins, the hormones like to go right up to the top. They'll just travel right up till there's no other place to travel. So if you've got one giant bud and it's growing right into the light and getting tons of light, there's going to get lots of auxins and cytokinins, the gibberellins are the ones I'm thinking of, and all the things that are going to make it stretch. So by bending that over, those all go to the tops. So if we bend those over sideways or super cropping where we are bending it sideways, or even just trellising them so they're sideways, now all of a sudden they're not the tippy tops anymore. As those hormones go over, they go, they're going to go to the big bud, but instead it goes sideways. Now it just, all these buds go up and you get these, nice, 3-4 gram buds instead of just some big giant one where they're all smushed together.
Well, I like this too because instead of fighting against the stretch,
Sure.
you're redirecting the stretch outward.
Yeah.
So the plant gets to do what it wants to do and you get what you want out of it.
Yeah, that's what I got, man. These are 3 really easy ways or real intuitive ways to stop the stretch and to understand what's going on when you click those lights back to flower. But you tell me, what is your best technique? What is your best trick for handling the stretch once you click your plants back to flower? Let me know in the comments. And if you dug this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with another grower you know. And check out the other couple videos YouTube's recommending. We think you'll dig them.
Yeah, we think you'll dig them. Shout out to these guys. Go catch them tonight at the Green Table Podcast. Whatever time it is, wherever you're going to be, but you know where to go, right?
Why they so mad? Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tags. I spend the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year, and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, but now you done seen it, I hope that you ready so mad. Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tags. I spend the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year, and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, but now you done seen it, I hope that you ready to clash. Yeah. Graduated from the streets at the top of my class. You wonder more than let's get it. I told you I live it, all you had to do is just ask. I know before I was chillin', just trying to get big, it's now all of that shit in the past. I take it up to the ceiling, however you willin', just so that you ready for class. Run down, I do this shit with no mask. If they won't call it a race, we gon' lap 'em. Cry like a baby when you get back at 'em. They here for the now, but they never gon' last. Why? Slow through my life like a turtle, but you get too close and I'm ready to snap. Rules to the game and they all universal. If you break a rule, then you never come back. Living my life, I'm just chillin'. Big plate, I'm gon' eat, they gon' eat out the trash. Once they find out you a clown, gotta leave out of town and you never come back. I sit around many counters, I'm loving the sound that it make when it gets to a stack. And I show nothing but love, but if you a hater, then fuck ya, I know I'm so mad. Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tags. I spend the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year, and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it, I hope that you ready so mad. Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tags. I spend the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year, and that check that you wrote to get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon, well now you done seen it, I hope that you ready to clash.
100K play, honey bun K. You don't want smoke with this right here. Know what you say, swing by your way. Get caught in my headlights like, dear, watch what you say. Don't be compray. Internet niggas is so damn weird. I'm from the Bay, he from upstate. Told you before that this so flow, no sick, no suit. Big business, no suit. Sedan truck, no coupe. Long leg room, big shoes. Mirror crop my move. All my ops is food. All my ops was fools. Hard cold like ice cubes. Always woke, no snooze. All this smoke, no booze. All good days, no blues. Except for what I got in pocket, cause you know I'm gon' get it. Leave me alone with your home. Fuses get blown, cause I'm gonna grow in it. I stay with them plans, you stay with them Zans, so you might be gone in 4 minutes. Don't blame me for all of your goals unachieved. You just a whole nigga.
Why they so mad? Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just getting started, I didn't even get in my bag. Man, I won't think with you niggas, but y'all steady
Then
hating,
again,
don't
like
talk
you
about
said, it
popping
is
no
Father's
tags.
Day.
I
They
spend the
might
block
not
cause I'm
even be
patient, come back
live
in the
tonight,
year, and
but
that check that you
we'll
wrote to
see.
get cash. You wanna smoke with the demon,
Yeah,
well,
I'm
now
sticking
you
to
done
my
seen it, I
schedule.
hope that you ready so mad. Cause they see me on the come up, I'm just
Pop
getting
up,
started, I didn't
couple
even
hour
get in my
live,
bag. Man,
get
I
up
won't
out of
think with you
there.
niggas, but y'all steady hating, don't talk about popping no tags. I spend the block cause I'm patient, come back in the year, and that check that you wrote to get cash.
Putting
You
on
wanna
the
smoke
twist
with
too
the demon, well now you
anyways,
done
right?
seen it, I hope that you ready to clash.
Izzy Pop, good to see you. How you doing? Another day in paradise over here.
Is it possible to be another master?
If you put the work in. Because think about this, right? One thing about corporate America, they want to be with whoever winning. So you got to know how to negotiate what you want when you can. But once you sign that deal, it's over with. So think about it. When I first went into there, I told them, I'm going to put out 20-something records. They say, no, you're not. Well, I'm signing that deal. I'm saying, why can't I own the company? We never did that before. That's why I'm going to do it. So the art of negotiation is real. You have to know how to when you have the control, how to utilize it. But some of us take that power and we abuse it.
In what way?
I'm just saying, you abuse it because you think, you just got the money. No, it's about building relationships and resources. So you should be able to pick up the phone and say, look, I'm making this much money for the company. We got to be able to talk about some of these things.
Right.
And that's you also got to you got to be able to communicate in love, and we don't know how to do that.
When you say communicate in love,
communicate in love if you want to get something done. So think about, you got to watch how you talk to people. That's like in the hood. If you're in prison, you're gonna communicate in love, or you're gonna be fighting. Right or wrong?
Right.
Okay. On the streets, if you don't communicate in love, you're gonna be fighting.
Okay. Well, communicate in respect.
Love.
Love.
It's two different words.
Right.
Two different words. They're two different words.
Just saying, but communicating in love, is that similar to when you got out west and Suge Knight was like,
I communicated in love.
Can you tell us about that story?
I communicated in love. That's what it was. I communicated in love.
It makes sense because
I heard you. Nah, because think about it. I respect the man.
Right.
He's doing something what a lot of black men are not doing. Just because he locked up, I'm not gonna bash him or throw him under the bus. I'm telling you, like, you had a used car. You told me what you wanted for it. I gave you what you wanted for it, and everything else was love. That was it. We went on about our business. Other people probably couldn't understand it, but I respect it because this is a black man that did something with a label like that rope, right?
Right.
So I ended up signing Snoop. Snoop was a student of mine, and now he ended up being a teacher, and he went back and built his thing up and brought that rope records.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, everybody was amazed because it was unheard of. Like,
because you don't know how to communicate in love. I know people look at my hand. So I was electrocuted at 5 years old, so you're going to see that. So it went from my feet and came out here, and I was supposed, they pronounced me dead.
Wow.
So it's 5 years old. 5 years old. So I'm listening to Run DMC, jumped out the water, and my dad, something came and said, go sit out the trash or something. I'm in the hood, dog. My dad, huge, so I jumped up. I'm scared. I jumped up, bam, stepped on the radio because I'm listening to the music. And I never knew I was going to be doing music. And so God spared my life. They only had one person in our hood that had a car. They got me to the hospital and saved my life. So that's where the TV series is going to start at. And so it went through my feet and came out.
Can you show the camera in your hand? Yeah. He's an X-Man. The whole time.
I realized that God had a different, path for me.
Right.
But sometimes you got to step up to it. And so that's when, even though I was a hustler on the streets, I wasn't in love with the game. And so a lot of people don't understand it because people that's in love with the game, they die out there on the block. I was just trying to make some money to feed my family.
Right.
And I asked God to forgive me, and I just, I ain't looking back. But I feel like I could help save some of these other kids. People don't realize Team Hope Foundation and Urban Born, we've been doing that for over 25 years.
Right.
So in California, like I said, I'd have been out here, I'd have been to Memphis, New Orleans, Texas, California. So in California, our program, I had Nipsey in the 8th grade.
Wow.
And so we've been trying to save kids, we've been burying kids, and been educating kids. So that's what TeamHopeFoundation.org, you want to make a difference, go on there. They be donating to these foundations. We in the middle of the jungle. We have some of the worst hoods in America and taking care of kids.
the memes. You ever see the memes where it say, would you go to dinner with this person or take a certain amount of money?
Yeah.
I think they originated from you when you told the story about sitting with Michael Jackson lawyer and paying the $25,000.
Yeah.
How important was that meeting for your career?
I mean, that was the most important thing I ever had to do, invest in myself. So you got to imagine, I'm living in the projects at that time. I took $25,000 in the early 90s, right? And just to pay to sit down and talk to an attorney. Nobody wouldn't do that. They're like, man, I ain't about to do that. But knowledge and information and wisdom is the most important thing that we need. And so when I got that information, I say, well, how much Michael Jackson get a record? He said 22%. I say 22% and he on Neverland, right? Damn. Is it anything bigger than that? He said, yeah, you get a distribution deal where you get 80% and a record company get 20%. That's the deal I want. I ain't know nothing about it, but I started studying it, and then the guy told me before I left that I gave him my money. I got mad, right? I'm like, okay, what else I need to know? Well, you need to have $200,000 marketing. I said, man, I just gave you 25 G. I got $500. I'm going back to the project. You telling me I need $200 more dollars? So I'm like, man, what I'm gonna do?
Right.
But I took to the streets to where I started selling my CDs out the trunk of my car, and I stopped hustling. I stopped doing all the other stuff, and I told God, you know, if you let me make it in this, because I done been through it all. When y'all see my movie, I done been through it all, dog. And just being on the block and being real with people, I think that saved my life. So I had a lot of close calls, and I still give God the glory no matter what. The losses, the wins, I tell people all the time, you don't learn from wins, you learn from losses. And so if we're gonna take 5-10 years to hustle, get caught, go to prison, 20 years, whatever we're gonna invest, why not invest 4 years and go to college or 4 years to build your business? Think about it. We're gonna invest that type of time into doing something that we're gonna end up being incarcerated, making 3 cents a day. Because that's what they give you when you go to prison.
Well, most people don't have the examples.
Yeah.
So, you know, we work off what we see. Usually when someone makes it in the neighborhood, when somebody has that good job, or somebody, you know, is going off to college, they're not coming back to the hood. And I think the past decade and a half, it's been our people looking at rappers and entertainers because they're the ones that we can see vision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But there's a lot of business people, man, that have made it, and you have to study. That's why I say education is so important. When you look at Reginald Lewis, who did it in D.C., the white men, watch the white men have all the fun, right? These guys started a business and got into the food business and turned into a multi-millionaire. He wasn't an athlete or entertainer. So when you look at some of the people that's controlling the world, they just making money. You don't even know who they are.
That's a fact.
You know what I'm
That's
saying?
a
We
fact.
just want to look. So think about it. If the Lakers could give LeBron James $200 million or whatever they give him, right? Or even Nike, if they could give him $1 billion, how much they make?
Facts. Right.
Do you still wear the Master P sneaker?
Bro, I got the manadas on now. Motivate oneself, encourage, actively to think independently. I'm still making sneakers.
Break that down one more time.
Motivate oneself. Wait up. Motivate oneself actively to hold on. Motivate oneself. Hold up, y'all. Hold up. Motivate oneself actively to think independently. When you at it.
Manyatis.
Yeah.
Where I get those at?
Go online. Manyatis.com.
What's the tag on those?
Different prices, man. Come on, what you paid for those? what you paid for those?
That grip.
You know what I'm saying? But you was cool with giving a white man your bread. You see what I'm saying? You ain't asking what the tag on those.
I did that.
You ain't ask.
I did that.
Bro, did he ask? No, man, what's it there? See what I'm saying? See that? Okay.
I gave a white man to give a black man an opportunity at the same time.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I had to make sure that.
All right.
All right.
So why you questioning me?
I'm
If you
just
like
saying.
something, you just go online and get them.
All right, bet. You got it.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You ain't even got to look at the price. Come on now, you doing good now. I wouldn't be here if you wasn't doing good.
See, that's how you speak
You
with
see
love.
what I'm saying?
That's how you speak with love. That's how you speak with love. I'm actually, the question is kind of like outside of the regular question. You ever did Ancestry.com?
Nah, I didn't.
No?
Nah, but I think I am though. Because I do want to know,
Right.
you know, the history.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Is that, how important is that?
I mean, that's important. I mean, think about what we're doing now. We talk about doing Black history events. So I definitely need to learn my roots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the stuff I'm afraid, I'm like, damn, do I really want to know that?
Right.
You know, but it's time. Because you can't keep going forward if you don't know where you came from.
Right. How far back can you go in your family tree?
I hope I got a kind of knowing, so I can't wait to see. I know where I come from, and I just want to see really how far back we go.
Mm. You know what else come with that, right?
What?
People gonna be like, Master P, my second cousin. Nah, they gonna be like, it's confirmed.
Well, guess what? I ain't selling records no more. That's what I can tell you. I ain't selling records no more.
You got the Miatis going. You got the
Stay out of my business. When you get out there and work, put the work in. I mean, because I don't want people to think that it just popped out. I failed so many times too. So I want y'all to know it ain't about me just winning.
Right.
You know, I had to open up for Tupac. When the lights was on, I'm out there, so a lot of people see us and see where we at, but don't know what we've been through. And so that's what keeps me humble, and that's what keeps me going, knowing that that life like this, you could be there, you go there. You know, by me come from the streets, you do this.
Yeah.
You know, you keep as long as you keep going up, you good.
Right. Wow. Opening up for Tupac.
Yeah.
At that time, did people know who Master P was?
Probably not. But I made them know. So, you know, I went from having one fan. I told one guy was bouncing about it in the audience. And I said, man, I was happy. I told my brother, I said, I got one. He said, what? I said, I got a fan. I said, I'm going to turn that one into a million. And that's what I did.
And you did it without the internet.
That's what he
had no
did.
internet. You know, I was touched, like I said, I came out here. Like, I went everywhere out here and passed my records out and sold my records out the trunk of my car. So when I did the distribution deal, you needed $200,000 to do the marketing and promotion. Right. So that's why you see a lot of these artists, when they say, oh, I want a deal, because they don't have the promotion and marketing money.
Right.
And so by me selling my CDs out the trunk of my car, I kind of watched the Avon lady sell a Tupperware in the hood. And so when I seen her start popping her trunk open, I started doing it too. I got my game from the Bay Area. And being able to watch that independent game, and I took it back home down south, and the rest was history.
Now, doing the deal with UMG, did you ever run into problems with them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody run into problems because it's about money. But my thing is, I never thought I was better than them. I was appreciative that I'm getting a check from them, a real check. And I think a lot of us get caught up with that. You know, we can't see that this is somebody else cutting you a check. You want to be bigger than the people that's cutting you a check. You sometimes got to play your position and play your role. Even when my brother got killed at a young age, you know, you want to question God, but when you start realizing that, you know what, everybody got a time. And then when my brother went to prison, it's like, you know what, you got to get into the Bible more. Same thing I had to do when things wasn't going right for me. I learned to pray to God.
So I had to do
Because
it.
he gonna touch it when he need to. Right. And then you got to be willing to answer.
How often do you see him?
You know, with my brother, man, my brother been going through it. My brother been going through it, and I'm praying for him. And I feel like now, everything that done happened, I love my brother. I'll go to war behind him. But there's something that, you know, he got to ask God to get him to where he need to go, because that's what I did. When I wasn't all the way right, I started asking God, like, man, show me something. You know, I don't want to die out here. I want to do what I got to do. I want to change, and And he opened the doors when I wanted to change. So that's any man. So once you're 12 years old, you got to pay for your own sins. That's what people don't realize. And once I knew that, I'm like, man, okay, God send a murderer, a prostitute to heaven. I'm like, man, okay, I got a shot. And I started doing right. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta want to do right.
Right. Are you trying to keep him in the right mindset?
Yeah, I mean that's my family, dog. Like, you know, there ain't nothing to talk about. We gonna make it happen. I mean, but he still got to make it happen too.
Right. So you find success, being a man of God.
Yeah.
When you're blessed with a lot, in the way that Lot was
man,
tested.
you know how hard it is for a rich man to get to heaven? That's the hardest thing in the world. So that's why you got to have some integrity. Just because you got money. So most people love money and use people. So I figured it out. Love people and use money. It's a tool. And so, you know, I don't worry about none of this stuff. Like I come from the streets, life go up and down, like I said. I'm like instant grits. I can make some money, all you gotta do is add water. You know what I'm saying? So,
but do you find like the success, it tears at your family? We see a lot of celebrities or
nah, so no, you gotta know how to cut people off and tell people no when they're entitled. So I got out here and worked. The reason why I'm still successful because I keep working. Right. The Bible says faith without works is dead. Most of these people want a good life, but they don't want to work. Look where we at. We're in a barbershop with y'all in Harlem. I could be sitting in my mansion chilling. But I decided to come out. I want to touch the people. I want to be around my people. I want to constantly keep growing. I want to help my people. So that means you can't sit inside your house and live off of old money. That's why I got to make them say, yeah, why you gonna do it? This is what we gonna be doing. We drinking. But while you drinking regular cells, I'm drinking, make them say, the only drink in the world that make you say,
I got great product. I got the hookup, one of my favorite movies, right?
Yeah.
Can we expect to see you in any more movies?
So I'm working on, right now, the TV series, the Ice Cream Man TV series. So
This trapper to a smack rapper. Only smack rapper that you know is smack rapper. I'm lonely sometimes because I can't hang with everybody. Yeah, man. I have morals. I believe in certain things. Certain things ain't gonna happen around me. I told it was gossiping about somebody and talking about what some artist had done. And I said, were you there? And they said, yeah. I said, well, did they feel comfortable enough to do that kind of stuff around you? Because they wouldn't have done that around me. So that also says something about you. Yes, sir. If you were there and it went down and you did nothing, that tells me about you.
Smoking trees, I'm planting trees. Pass that love, let the whole block breathe from this porch to this.
What is going on, YouTube? Here we go again. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 2x2 Growing. Hope you're all having a really awesome day. All right, in tonight's episode, I'm giving you all the information you need to know. This is the update on the seeds ban. The federal seed ban is the most disruptive legal shift to the industry's genetics in U.S. history, and there is a lot of confusion floating around about what is going on. The online nature of things have taken hold, of course. I said in my first video about this topic that I would be giving you an update, so let's get into the facts right here. First off, for everyone that hasn't heard about this ban actually stems from Section 781 of the Agriculture Appropriations Act, which was quietly signed into law back in November 2025. It included a 365-day grace period, which completely runs out on November 12th, 2026, which is less than 5 months away. 4 years, the entire online seed market operated legally under the 2018 Farm Bill because a seed itself contains 0%, classifying it as a hemp product. Section 781 rewrites that completely. The shift that happens in the languaging now reclassifies the total amount from the mother plant that it came from to apply to the seed. And if the seed can produce over 0.3% total, guess what? Now the seed is excluded from that hemp definition and becomes a federally controlled substance. Sorry to keep you waiting so long on the updates. I just had to give everyone a chance to get up to speed here. But now, for the updates on the pushback, there actually is active legislation going on. Lawmakers have introduced H.R. 6209, a full repeal. Maybe not going to happen. But we've also got another one, H.R. 710, a bill to delay the implementation and give the industry more time. So count that. We got a bill to cancel it completely going up. And then we also have
I might have
another
to get
bill
me a
to
nice big
delay.
seed order in.
Also, major players like
Shout out to
North American
SOS,
Seed Co.
Death
have
Valley.
launched the Keep Seeds
He
legal
said he had
campaign,
about 12 for
arguing
60.
that
I was like, yeah,
stifles
I'm gonna
the
hit you up.
agricultural innovation and scientific
As soon as I
research.
get my
America
money right.
is pretty much number one in the world for
Shout
strain
out to
advancement,
Kanye West.
and that will come
He
to a
was letting me know
screeching
he was
halt
finna buy some
if
seeds.
781 is not delayed or dealt with in some way. Now I have to quickly go over the Schedule 3 savior myth. Many people think that moving flower to Schedule 3 will actually save the seed market. Even when the rescheduling happens, shipping a Schedule 3 controlled substance across the state lines via UPS and FedEx is, without question, a federal crime. The rescheduling helps out with corporate taxes, not mailing genetics. Even if you don't live in the United States of America, this will affect you. I live up here in Canada, and I know personally that Canada gets most of its new genetics from the United States, and there are very few banger strains that actually come from Canada. Another thing that sucks up here in Canada, we usually have to wait years to get our hands on the newest and the best strains. And with 781, it won't even be years anymore. It just won't happen. If you live in a state that has it legalized, then you are in somewhat luck. You still will be able to buy seeds inside of your state. You just won't be able to order them online to cross state lines. If you do not live in a state that has legalization, well, this is not so awesome for you. Your legal access has dropped to zero. There is somewhat of a saving grace, if you want to call it that. Existing stashes are safe. Law does not ban seeds that you already own. Stocking up is the best way to go right now. Autoflower growers, you are pretty much hooped. You really need to stock up. Personally, I've been picking up 2 packs every single month since I found out this information because I know things are just going to be cut off and then it's going to be left up to myself to be crossing my own new strains. But I will have their strains in my possession to actually make something super crazy. Up here in Canada, we still have seeds legally sold at stores absolutely everywhere. In fact, for the first time ever, I actually heard that there are some clones sitting in multiple dispensaries around the town right now. So, pretty much, this is going full steam up here with legalization here in Canada. The clones took a very long time, though. Anyway, I'm going to be wrapping this episode up right about now, so please go down there and smash that like button. Take her easy, everyone. I'll see you next time.
It's true. I have your junk. All 60 keys. But you're gonna have to give me something that I want.
Fuck you. Are you crazy? You're a dead man. He just admitted that he stole from us.
I didn't steal it, but I found a country boy who did. New kid in town. Walked right over in Outfox chain. Now that I have it, the fine gentleman can make a choice. One that benefits all of you.
And what is that?
Simple. Either I keep the narcotics and we go to war, or I give it back and Chin takes his ass out of Harlem.
You ain't getting out of here alive.
Fuck you. I got 100 soldiers outside to make sure he does.
Now, I got no love for Bumpy fucking Johnson, but there's wisdom to what he's saying. If we kill him, we never get the dope back.
That's a steep price to pay right there. You ask me, I'd rather have the fucking money. Chin's been in control of the narcotics for over a year because of Johnson, and he's charging us double. Look, our problem isn't with Johnson. Our problem is with Chin.
So
just got breaking news, and this is massive. A hot off the press Supreme Court ruling just changed everything. As we all know, when it comes to cannabis users, even in legal states, your Second Amendment rights are up in the air. But now the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of firearm rights for cannabis users. They've even said that unlawful users may legally possess firearms. And this all comes mere months after President Trump's rescheduling move.
I want to go now to MS Now's Fallon Gallagher. She's outside the Supreme Court. Fallon, we thought maybe we'd get a whole lot of decisions. Tell us what you know. What have we learned so far?
Yes, Steph, we got 3 decisions today, so that means the justices still have 17 to decide, and they're really working with a short timeline. They usually like to be done here by July 1st, but we did get one of those more high-profile cases that we were looking for, and that's a case called U.S. v. Hamani. Now, this case was brought by a Texas man who's a sort of recreational marijuana user, and he's challenging a law from the 1960s that blocks unlawful drug users from possessing firearms. The FBI searched his house. They found that he was a marijuana user. They found that he also had a firearm, and they convicted him under this law. Now, this law may sound familiar to you because the most high-profile instance of this case actually involves Hunter Biden. He was actually not only charged under this law, but convicted of it 2 summers ago, and then, of course, later pardoned by his dad, former President Joe Biden. But this is a big deal for marijuana users nationwide. I do want to be careful about one thing here because it is a fairly narrow ruling. It was 9-0. It's authored by Gorsuch. There are a ton of concurring opinions, meaning that a number of the other justices agree with the overall ruling, but might agree a little bit differently on the reasoning or the logic for how they got to that ruling. But 9-0 opinion, and also one of those concurrings is an interesting combination. It's an Alito-Kagan duo, which is not something we see very often, but this is a unanimous opinion from the court, which is a big deal. And they're saying on sort of narrow grounds here that anyone who is a marijuana user who's using a drug like this, who's not a danger, can now lawfully use a firearm.
So guys, this is literally breaking news, and it's a massive issue that a lot of folks have been keeping an eye on. And according to this, the Supreme Court upholds marijuana users' gun rights and rejects the Trump DOJ arguments in a major Second Amendment case. Now, this is a big win for cannabis users, and this news is breaking across all major news sites, every one of them. You can do a search to find out the facts of this case, but the facts of this case we actually broke down in past videos, so check those out if you haven't already. But what's really interesting about this ruling is that the Supreme Court rules that the government cannot restrict gun rights for casual drug use. And what's even more remarkable is that this decision was made on a 9-0 vote. Now, it's important to point out that this does state that the ruling is a narrow one, which does not address broader issues raised about banning drug addicts from possessing firearms. But the important takeaway here is that the court rejected the federal government's claim that anyone who uses marijuana is a danger to others, all based on the government's own assessment. Now, we do need to dig into the facts of this a little bit more because this is a massive ruling, and it'll affect millions of people across America. But before we do, just a quick reminder, if you're getting value from this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support us further, join the ICANN VIP Bean Club or cop some merch from our merch store. We got that new American-grown hoodie. Use that code ICANNTHC and grab it now. And if you happen to be a home gardener, try the ICANN Organics. Use the code LEGAL. It works on the bundle and the seeds.
The Supreme Court has just issued some new opinions, including one about gun rights. Let's bring in CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford, the person to talk to in these situations. So, Jan, can you explain what was the case about gun rights? What was at the heart of the case, and how did the justices rule?
Well, first of all, this was a case where a Texas man, a guy named Ali Hamani, was prosecuted for owning a gun because the government found a small amount of marijuana in his house, and he admitted he smoked pot a few times a week. The government said, wait, that violates a federal gun control law that prohibits people who are unlawful users of controlled substances from having a gun. It doesn't matter if you're an addict or you abuse drugs, you can just use it 1 or 2 times a week. That was the government's position. Pretty broad, and that's what the court said today in rejecting the government's argument and prosecution of Mr. Hamani. The court said that in a decision they all agreed with was the right outcome. The court said that the government went too far when it tried and it did prosecute Mr. Hamani, who was facing 15 years in prison for owning a gun in his home because he had some marijuana, and that the government had to show more, that there was no historical basis for this kind of prosecution. It wasn't like a habitual drunkard, which was the way they referred to it in the past, and had some of those laws that the government pointed to. Under the government's broad theory, it could prosecute anyone, a husband who used his wife's Ambien, that would go under the Controlled Substances Act, a college student who borrowed some Adderall, studying for exams, all of those under the government's view, they could be prosecuted for and stripped of their Second Amendment rights. The court today, in a decision by Justice Gorsuch, said no. That goes way too far. That's way too expansive. The government has to show more. We're not talking about addicts. We're not talking about people who are convicted of felonies. We're not talking about people who might be dangerous to themselves or others. Just this kind of occasional drug user, a drug that's pretty commonly used now, that does not qualify. So a big win for Mr. Hamani, a decision that all the justices, an outcome they all agreed with. They had some different opinions on how to get there, but they all came together on this one.
So this is a big win for Mr. Hamani, and it also sets a precedent that whether you're a legal, recreational, or medical cannabis user, you can also own firearms. And that's pretty clear, as that's the headline across multiple news outlets. But what's really interesting is that the justices distinguished and differentiated between cannabis users, just regular cannabis recreational users, and straight-up drug addicts. Most medical or recreational users are not a danger to themselves, are not a danger to society, and don't go about doing crazy things that a lot of folks do when they do other things like, let's say, alcohol. Now, like I've said time and time again, President Trump's rescheduling order was a massive move, and that's the catalyst for a lot of change that we see at the federal level. Not just at the federal level, but also at the state level. According to this, the court literally took that into account, because they said, and I quote, "As this case came to us, marijuana was listed on Schedule 1, a schedule reserved for drugs with a high potential for abuse, with currently no accepted medical use. But after we heard some oral arguments, the government moved some marijuana products to Schedule 3, a schedule that applies to drugs with a lower potential for dependence and abuse, and for which currently accepted medical use exists. They even recognized that millions of Americans regularly use the good herb, and they even went on to say that in these circumstances, marijuana use today is like alcohol use at the founding. It's widespread and increasingly considered socially acceptable in many quarters, and from a practical standpoint, law enforcement widely tolerates the use of the good herb. And that's even reflected in sporting organizations like the WNBA, which has removed the good herb from its banned substances list and also set rules for play endorsements on hemp CBD products. So there's a lot of change happening when it comes to the good herb, and this is probably one of the biggest that we've seen to date. But let's dig into this a little bit more and hear exactly what the Supreme Court justices had to say about this whole thing. Listen.
All right, we've been all watching the Supreme Court to see what they will talk about this summer. Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Avajoy Burnett joins us now live from Washington with news from the High Court. Avajoy, what have we heard?
This is a 9-0 decision where all of the justices agreed that the United States cannot take away weapons from people if they are seen as unlawful users of drugs. I want to read a portion of what was written in this opinion just moments ago. The justices said the government's prosecution of a gentleman by the name of Mr. Hamani is an unlawful user provision, is inconsistent with the Second Amendment. And then they went on to say the Second Amendment protects the right of all Americans to keep and bear firearms for self-defense. And they reference a case out of the District of Columbia. The issue at hand here involved a gentleman out of the state of Texas. His last name is Hamani, and he is someone who was charged with having a firearm because they said he was an unlawful user of drugs. The issue that the justices had to consider here is whether someone who is an unlawful user of drugs should be allowed to have a firearm. And in this 9-0 decision, they decided that absolutely yes, someone who is using drugs unlawfully, they're allowed to have a firearm. But this issue also kind of looked into matters surrounding the circumstances of someone having a firearm. You could be an unlawful user of drugs, but you didn't have to be under the influence at the time that you were using or that you possessed that weapon. And so those are the matters, those are the issues that the U.S. Supreme Court justices looked into. This is one of two gun rights cases that the High Court considered this particular term, and this is one of those major decisions that we were waiting to hear about. So what this case does is it pretty much broadens access. It protects or adds additional rights rights to gun owners here in the United States. And what the justices are saying is it doesn't matter if you're using drugs. The Second Amendment protects your right, your ability to possess a weapon. And there are no carve-outs for that. There are no restrictions for that when it comes to when you're using the drugs, whether you're under the influence or not. These are all issues that the justices considered here. And in a 9-0 decision, they determined that the Second Amendment does not restrict someone's ability to possess a firearm, even if they use drugs. So once again, this is a significant decision out of the United States Supreme Court just moments ago.
Now, what I also found pretty interesting in this whole thing is that in the court's discussion of this issue, they also raised issues about alcohol and drunkards, and this is a pretty interesting parallel, and this is what they had to say. Have a listen.
So in this case, the federal government, to defend this ban on drug users possessing guns, they looked back to the founding era, and really the only analog that they said came close were these laws that banned habitual drunkards from possessing firearms. But Justice Gorsuch's opinion today is noting the meaning of habitual drunkard back in the founding era may be a little different than what you or I might consider it today. You know, even if you go through the opinion today, he's talking about some of the founding fathers like James Madison and some of the others actually going through some of their drinking habits and saying, if you're able to prosecute this man, it would have meant that people like James Madison would have been able to be disarmed back at the founding.
Yeah, I remember there's a lot of conversation about that, about how much they used to drink when you bring it into today's times and how you measure that. The court ruled unanimously, but some of the liberal justices didn't go without sharing some disagreements that they had with Gorsuch's opinion. What did they have to say?
Yeah, beneath the surface here,
Shit.
there are some
Appreciate you coming by
disagreements because
saying
even
hi.
though this decision was unanimous, everyone here applied the conservative justices test. You had two of the liberal justices, this is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor, again saying that this new test just simply doesn't work. They called it unworkable, and again called on the Supreme Court to go back to what they were doing before that landmark decision from a few years ago. So very explicitly, two liberal justices essentially want to blow this whole framework up and go back to before that decision.
Will this affect other cases in the future, you think?
It really could. You got to imagine that a lot of Second Amendment lawyers are going to be reading this decision today. I will say, Gorsuch, in his majority opinion, he cautions that it's a very narrow opinion. But like I said, there are those other statutes out there, particularly, for example, the ban for felons possessing a firearm. Right now in the lower courts, there's a lot of litigation over that law, and that could now be affected by this decision today.
So this is big news no matter how you split it, and it recognizes the fact that millions of Americans at this very moment in time use the good herb for medical purposes across America, and denying them the Second Amendment rights would definitely be unconstitutional. So let me know what you guys think about all that. It's really interesting that this news dropped today, and of course,
hey, somebody wants some wisdom though,
so
right?
make sure that you guys are subscribed. But where do you guys stand on this whole issue? I'm really interested to find out where you guys
never know
stand
what
in
your
the
teeth
comment
might be
section
worth to
down
somebody
below.
else.
Now, in our next video, President Trump's scheduling move is proving to be a major catalyst, even in currently prohibition states. And right now, we can see major change
your mom
in
used to
both
pay
North
for 'em,
and
right?
South Carolina. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's coming up right now.
Might have been dad's money, but mom was still paying, right?
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome into our latest TWP Cannabis in 5. I am your host, Shad Dales. Today I'm going to break down what investors must pay attention to heading into the June 29th administrative law judge hearing and why the July 15th conclusion date is one of the most important signals we've seen yet for federal cannabis reform. And yes, we'll also factor in the new lawsuit filed last week by Sam, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and explain what it really means, also what it doesn't mean, and for the path to Schedule 3 here in our latest TDR Cannabis in 5. So let's get into it. All right, let's look at segment number 1, June 29th hearing, and what it really is. So the June 29th hearing is the formal administrative law judge ALJ review of the DEA's proposed rule to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to now Schedule 3. A reminder, this is not a trial, it's not adversarial, it's not a criminal proceeding, it's simply a regulatory evidentiary hearing, and historically, these hearings, they follow a predictable structure. So what is that structure? Well, the ALJ reviews scientific evidence, public comments, and agency rationale. Thank you, HHS recommendation. The ALJ evaluates whether the DEA followed proper procedure. The ALJ issues a recommended decision, not a binding one. The DEA administrator then makes the final call in all this. And everyone, here's the key, okay? ALJs almost never overturn or block agency actions when the agency has followed proper process and has scientific backing. Historically, ALJs tend to affirm the agency's direction, even if they critique parts of the reasoning. So for you, the investor, the question isn't, will the ALJ stop rescheduling? The real question is this: what timeline signals does the ALJ process actually indeed reveal? So let's now move to segment number 2 and why the July 15th end date indeed matters. So the DEA, they set a hard end date of July 15th for the conclusion of the hearing process. And let me tell you, everyone, this is extremely telling. Regulatory agencies do not set tight windows unless 1, they already know the scope of the hearing, 2, they expect limited testimony, 3, they accept no major procedural delays, and 4, they want the rule finalized on a specific date. And here really is the big investor takeaway. A July 15th end date strongly suggests the DEA expects the process to move smoothly and that adult use rescheduling is included in the scope. Why, you might ask? Because really, if adult use rescheduling were not included, the DEA would not need such a compressed schedule. Now, a lawyer may disagree with me, but I'm trying to read between the lines here, because the DEA could simply finalize medical rescheduling and leave adult use for later. But instead, everyone, they're signaling the opposite. And it looks right now they want the entire package, medical and adult use, wrapped up before the election window closes. Yeah, midterms is going to play a role in this. And that is why July 15th is not just an end date, it's a regulatory tell. So let's look now at how courts historically treat these challenges, because investors need to understand how courts behave in these situations. So looking back historically, 1, courts rarely intervene in agency rulemaking unless the agency violated procedure. Also, emergency injunctions, like the one Sam is asking for, are almost never granted unless there is clear, immediate, irreparable harm. So that's weak. Also, courts defer heavily to scientific agencies on scientific matters, and challenges often take months or years long after the rule has already taken effect. So when you hear lawsuit, don't think block, think delay at the worst. But it's unlikely to change the outcome here, everyone. And I know we don't want to delay either, but that could be at play. So now let's move to the new Sam lawsuit. They filed a lawsuit last week asking the court to freeze the rescheduling process. So let's break this down in a few key points in plain English. So here's Sam's argument. They're saying the DEA is exceeding its authority. As well, Congress never intended cannabis to be rescheduled this way. Also, adult use markets violate federal law, so the DEA can't reschedule. So if you look a little closer, the lawsuit in some ways is weak. They're asking for an emergency freeze with no demonstrable harm, and courts don't like to intervene in ongoing administrative processes. And here's an interesting fact: standing is questionable, meaning the plaintiffs may not even be the right parties to sue. Also, the DEA, they follow the exact process required under the Controlled Substances Act. So now, what does this mean for you, the investor? Well, let's drum this down. The lawsuit is more about messaging than legal impact. It may create some noise, but it does not meaningfully threaten the rescheduling process. Far from it. The most realistic risk is timeline slippage in all this, but not cancellation. So now let's move into number 5, which is the investor playbook heading into June 29th. And here are the key things that investors should again be watching. 1 is the tone of ALJ questions. Are they procedural or substantive? Also, how the DEA frames adult use markets. This is going to be the biggest tell. And whether the ALJ signals comfort with the scientific evidence, which is going to historically be the deciding factor. And really reference to the July 15th deadline. If the judge reinforces it, then guess what? That's bullish. As far as market reaction to this lawsuit, expect some volatility, but don't expect a complete reversal. Those times have changed, because here is the bottom line in all this, everyone. Here in closing, the June 29th hearing is not a referendum on cannabis reform. It is a procedural checkpoint. The July 15th end date is a major signal that the DEA expects to finalize rescheduling quickly. And yes, the Sam lawsuit, it is indeed loud, but it's legally thin and unlikely to derail the whole process and all this. So I hope that makes you feel a little bit better. Again, I'm not a lawyer. This industry is more than prepared, but there's some telling signs we should get some positive reaction out of all this. So what's your thoughts on how this hearing is all going to go and unfold? I'd love to get your feedback, so get those comments coming in. Let's keep this conversation conversation going. As usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications and stay connected with us here at TDR. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Thanks again for checking in, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.
I'm James Reeves, Esquire. I am not your lawyer. This is not legal advice, and in fact, kind of a dicey video today, but good news, everyone. The Supreme Court this morning basically said that you can technically blaze up a fat-ass J in your house with all your guns around and not go to federal prison. Or did they? Slow down a sec there, Cheech. Because while the ruling in U.S. versus Hamani looks like a massive win for recreational marijuana users who also happen to own guns, which, let's be honest, is probably like 70 to 80% of you watching this channel, the decision's not quite as broad as Snoop Dogg or Hickok 45 might want it to be. In fact, several times the court goes out of its way to say, this is narrow, verbatim. They say, this is narrow. This isn't weed plus guns is totally cool. This is not, it's okay to lie in your 4473, so send it. And most importantly, this is not fire up your glong with print, shoot, repeat. This is a very specific case about a very specific federal statute and a very specific theory that the government tried to use against Hamani, but it's still a big deal. Here's what happened. Here's the truth, the whole story about this holding. So the defendant, Ali Hamani, Texas guy, he used to like to puff a little something, you know, and own guns. What's wrong with that? The government originally came sniffing around because of terrorism concerns, which, look, I mean, it's 2026, and if your name sounds like a little Taliban-y, and you've got a Discord account, there's a non-zero chance that somebody in a windbreaker is going to kick your door down. But if you're extremely wealthy, and let's say you have an island where you can bring all your wealthy friends, never mind. That's a totally different video. The government didn't charge him with terrorism. They charged him with littering and smoking the reefer. Well, technically, having guns and smoking the reefer. They charge him under 922G3. 922G3, it's the federal law that says a person who is an unlawful user of a controlled substance cannot possess firearms. And because marijuana is still treated as a controlled substance under federal law, the government's historically taken this position that all marijuana users are prohibited persons, even if it's legal in your state, even if you have a state medical card, you're an unlawful user and you're violating 922. Now, the government recently downgraded marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 anyway, so the feds themselves kind of admit that it's not in the same tier as like heroin. Then I guess that's another video too. Let's not go too far down that road. Let's talk about Hamani. So Hamani used marijuana every other day. He had a gun or two in his house. So according to the government, Hamani was a prohibited person. Case closed. 15 years in freaking federal pound you in the ass prison. 15 years for that. Supreme Court said, not so fast. Roller's rights on this one. The court didn't really fight about whether or not he fit the definition of unlawful user. The issue wasn't whether or not he fit the statute. He was an unlawful user. He technically broke the law. The issue was whether or not this statute, this prohibition, actually violates the Second Amendment. The court says, yeah, it does. Think about it like if you get 2 parking tickets in a year, then you can't own a gun anymore. You would hope that a court would say, hold on a second, that's a deprivation of your Second Amendment right. And that's more or less what they did here. So in this case, the government, the Trump administration, tries to justify sending this guy to jail for 15 years by comparing regular marijuana users to historical habitual drunkards. Remember, after Bruin, the Second Amendment is now interpreted, analyzed under this historical tradition analysis. Basically, the government's argument was, well, historically, the government could restrict the liberty of people who were constantly drunk, pissed drunk all the time, and unable to manage their own affairs. So the government should be able to disarm drug users. The court said to state the analogy is to expose its deficiency. That is Supreme Courtese for bruh. In fact, if anything, this argument helps Hamani. Historical habitual drunkard laws were aimed at people whose intoxication was so severe, shit their pants drunk, they were basically incapacitated, they were dangerous to themselves, they were dangerous to others. These laws weren't aimed at normal people who had a drink after work, just like 922 shouldn't be aimed at people who like little Maui Wowie after they slide down the brontosaurus back, after they get off the forklift for the day. The gist is, after Hamani, unlawful user alone by itself is not enough for the government to put you in jail for 15 years. It's got to be unlawful user plus something, plus addiction, plus intoxication, plus being an idiot with a gun, plus being dangerous to other people, plus using dangerous drugs. And with that, please put down your bath salt margarita with fent rim, because I'm willing to bet that even possessing like fentanyl or bath salts or crank or whatever, you're not going to get the Hamani treatment. You're probably going to prison because they're going to say just simply owning those drugs like shows that you're dangerous, or if you use those drugs and you have a gun in the house, like there's a good chance you could hurt yourself or someone else. I think the takeaway here is ordinary recreational marijuana use standing alone is not enough for the federal government to say that you're now a prohibited person, you go to prison for 15 years, lose all your gun rights for life. And again, this is a narrow ruling. The court goes out of its way to say several times, we're only deciding this narrow issue. It can't just be unlawful user, it's got to be unlawful user plus. I posted about this on Twitter, which is part of the reason why I'm making this video, because it got such a reaction. A lot of people asked me about FPS Russia and how this impacts him. That's easy. This case would not have helped him. He pled guilty to felony distribution, a totally different charge, not just I used marijuana and had guns. Felony drug distribution conviction, totally different. Next question, a bunch of people asked me, James, what about the drug user question on my 4473? I like this one. As a lawyer, I like this one. Form 4473 asks whether or not you're an unlawful user of, addicted to marijuana, any depressant, stimulant, narcotic, drug, any other controlled substance. The question is still on the form. Hamani does not address that question. Hypothetically, could Hamani himself walk into Walmart tomorrow after smoking a joint last night and then answer no to the unlawful user question on the 4473 because the Supreme Court just said that his marijuana use alone does not strip him of his Second Amendment rights? Now, this deserves another, I am not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. I'm not telling anyone to do this. No, I'm really not. Please don't do this, you buttholes. But here's the argument you could make, or your defense lawyer could make. Section 922A6, that's the false statement statute that people usually think of with a 4473. It says you can't lie on your 4473. However, it says you can't lie with respect to any fact material, there's the word material, to the lawfulness of the sale or other disposition of such firearm. Now, my argument is if I am a non-dangerous medical marijuana user, totally legal in the state, and it doesn't make me a prohibited person anymore under Hamani, when I lie in answering this question on the 4473, it's not a material lie, and therefore I am not breaking the law under 922A6. It's not a material lie. Once again, I am not telling you to do this. Let's do a fun thought experiment. Imagine that the 4473 asks, have you ever been an Atlanta Falcons fan? Sure, you should go to prison for that. But being an Atlanta Falcons fan obviously doesn't stop you from owning a gun.
He said just because you're a dirty bird don't mean your ass can't have a gun,
having
right?
been a Falcons fan, that lie should not be material as to whether or not a gun sale to you was lawful, and therefore not a crime if you lie about it. But, and this is a giant J-Lo, Nicki Minaj butt, that's not the holding in this case, and there is another statute that could still give you a problem. Don't be the test case here, unless you got a lot of money, very good lawyer, and you like federal prison food. The government is going to say, hey, look, Hamani was not a 4473 case, it wasn't a false statement case, so it doesn't apply here. That's their weaker argument, I think, for all the reasons I just said. But second, there's another statute, 924A1A. I'm going to call this like the the liar statute. This punishes false statements in records that FFLs are required to keep 5 years in prison. So lying on a form will still get you busted under 924, even if you beat 922 with that clever argument that I just made. This is somewhat related. Let me answer a question. It's like the most asked question that I get as the U.S. Law Shield Independent Program attorney for Louisiana and Mississippi. State medical marijuana card. Is it a magical exemption? Because I've got this medical marijuana card, so I'm not an unlawful user. I can answer no on the 4473. I'm not an unlawful user. You can't, because technically you're an unlawful user under federal law. You might be able to beat 922, as we talked about today, but you could still get in trouble under 924 if someone really comes after you, and that's up to 5 years in prison. So where does Hamani leave us today? It's a big Second Amendment win. You need more than just weed bad, gun scary, to take away someone's rights to own a gun for life and imprison them for 15 years. But it's not a complete legalization of drugs and guns like a lot of people seem to think on social media. It's just a step in the right direction to stop the prosecution of harmless drug users, people that don't pose a threat to themselves or others just because they also happen to own a gun. I'm James Reeves. I'm not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there.
There's ways to avoid burning out, and it's usually not the fact that people are lazy, it's they're overcomplicating things or they're running into issues. So I think today, boys, we should talk about some of those things that maybe we've dealt with in the past.
Yeah, there's so many different reasons why people would quit growing. It's a variety of different reasons, and we're going to cover that today. Some things other people might not think of. You know, I mean, us three have been doing it so long, 10, 15 years each. I think P maybe even has a few more years on top of that.
20 years over here, bro.
Oh, wow, okay.
Look at the grades. If you're listening, I have the most grades here, and it's because of all the times I wanted to quit in the garden.
Oh, man. Yeah, and for us, sometimes it's like kind of surprising when we hear about people quitting, because we're just so into it, and it's just part of our lives. It's ingrained in what we do every single day. Is deal with plants, growing these plants in a variety of different ways that we do it. But yeah, people just quit for a variety of different reasons. And let's get into it today.
You know what? And we could have been victims of it too. But the reality is that, whether it was a good mentor or good sources of information, good books, we found a way to persevere. Everything from, expectation versus reality, a bad run. That's where I've been in particular, where it's like, you spend so much money and it's just like all of a sudden you just have something go wrong. And it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or the fact that even prices on the legal market are at a point where it's like competitive to now just not care. And I'm excited about this one because I think no matter what level of gardening you're at, you've been here before. And if you haven't even gardened yet, at least this is a good way to give you a level of expectation to look at as you go into this, that it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows, but with the right diligence, the right process, and the right mindset, you can get just about anything done. So let's do it.
100, man. I think a big reason a lot of people quit out of the gate, in my opinion, and I've been there in the past, is bad genetics, man. Starting with shitty genetics and wondering why my plant looks this way, why the smoke is so flat, and 1980s white girl booty just flat, straight up door. What's going on with the way that it's taking so long and never flowering and it's supposed to be an auto flower? I'm doing something wrong. Well, a lot of times it's just bad seeds, bad genetics, some random shit that somebody just popped and threw out there and put a name on there, put it in a little Coke baggie and said, good to go. And unfortunately, that's a lot more common than you think, especially when you Google to find a strain. When you see Green Crag, AK-47, Blue Dream, White Widow, Super Silver Haze, list them. Anything that's been very popular in the past, a lot of times somebody's just throwing some random shit out there. And that could put you in a situation where you're growing, thinking that, oh, I've got this classic one that's supposed to be easy to grow, that's a heavy yielder, XYZ. None of those things happen, and you think it's you. But it wasn't you, it was them in that situation, okay? It's like a bad chick or a bad dude you're with. You gotta just sometimes move on and try something different. And you realize, well, the next one actually was better. This was God redirecting to a better genetic, but people quit. My second run, man, I thought I lost my green thumb before I had it, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna go back to the plug. I just lost so much money on this. My electricity bill, the nutrients, the soil, everything I spent, the genetics. I bought all these clones. It's like, fuck. It was bad genetics, man.
A lot of people start off with bag seed because that's all they really can afford. Is they'll start off with the seeds that they find within the buds, and not all bag seed is bad, right? So we don't really know the true route of how that bag seed came about. It could have been just another male in the tent, for example, or it was the plant was pollinated by a male, and that seed is perfectly fine, right? It's a regular seed. It could grow up and be a pretty good plant, or it could be, it could come from a hermaphrodite plant, right? Which is oftentimes what happens. That's why you often hear something that you might have heard when you first started growing was, don't use bag seed because it's most likely it'll most likely turn out to be a hermaphrodite. And what people mean by that is, what could have happened is you grow a plant, female, but all of a sudden it shows intersex traits. It shows those pollen sacs at the nodes. Pollen gets released and starts pollinating its own plant, right? Seeds off of that, sure, you can, smoke that flower. Some of the best genetics I've had, I don't want to say that, but some really good genetics as far as like taste and smell profile and effects have been from a hermaphrodite plant. So don't want to complete, and some award-winning genetics out there are truly hermaphrodite. So not trying to fully knock it, but oftentimes growers will get these bag seeds. They'll grow it up, it'll start to herm on them, and then they'll want to quit because, well, they're not having success with the genetics. So I figured I'd bring that one up and emphasize that a little bit when we're talking about bad genetics starting from that.
So true, so true. When you think about the people who have grown stuff and then they're told it's your problem, it's grower error, and they caused it, it's like, damn, dude, I just grew it like I grew every other plant that I had in here. Why did this one get bananas all over it? Like, what am I?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I really can't add anything more than you guys have already stressed at this, but it's like a lot of great adventures and a lot of great journeys, people's experiences began with a bag seed, right? I know so many people that are like, dude, I started growing because I got a seed in my bag and I just planted it. And it was like, boom, that's where it started. And it's like, yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that great genetics can come from that. But a lot of people, we have the pleasure of seeing a lot of gardens. And a lot of people present us problems with their gardens and they try to get us to diagnose them. And I'm the world's worst diagnostician when it comes to trying to figure out plant problems. But often I'll be like, well, what genetics do you have? And they're like, dude, it's just an unknown bag seed. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that at least is at least a ground where I can start from, where it's like, it's really hard to tell if anything is your problem, as you kind of mentioned. So, no, that's really good. That's really good. I was going to mention burnout, boys. I feel like a lot of people stop growing because, and you can almost compare this to the legal industry in Canada in 2018. It's like people don't know that growing this plant can take time. It takes effort and energy, constant checks, your feeding schedules, the problems that could come about, having to know about the plant, knowing about base nutrients, knowing about your micros, your macros, your bacteria, your bennies. It's like, it can be overwhelming and people can burn out so easily. And I know that I almost speak from experience in almost all of these, because it's like, it's not as easy as it looks, and it does take some vigilance and some, I want to say, constant care to make sure that the plants don't go astray, and this can wear at you.
Yeah, dude. And when you look at the amount of time that goes into it, and when you're young fly bachelor, things may be different, right, Chris? You remember back in the day when it was easy, you and your roommate had grows and everything's cool. Dude, the difference of having kids and raising plants together, and doing the business and doing all this shit, my plant count has dramatically changed just because of the amount of time that it takes to deal with this, dude. And I think that people underestimate how much an SOP for your home grow can save you like crazy. I mean, especially if you're using a bottled regimen, you want to change things up, you can easily go with auto watering, making things simple for yourself. You can also simplify it even more by switching to something like Stash Nutrients or any of your other favorite organic nutrients that just makes it really easy to water only. You don't have to worry about mixing things. You don't have to worry about measuring things. It's, well, you measure the initial and hand mixing. But it's one and done in most cases. Simplifying your process and making it easy for you to be able to repeat this routine without getting tired of it and without feeling that like tedious aspect makes it so you could just go down there and see this euphoric garden of Whedon that you could just vibe in and really just soak in that appreciation of the work that you've done. That's a lot less stressful and more structured.
Yeah, the burnout and time commitment issues is real for a lot of us, right? We all have busy lives. Most people growing are doing it as a hobby. They're not really getting paid. Unless you're in the gray market, black market, whatever, you're profiting off what you're growing there. But for the most part, most of us, we're just growing for ourselves. We're growing for maybe friends and family that we're gifting things to. And when you have a job, 40 hours, 50 hours, 60-hour plus week job, plus you go home to a family where you've got 1 or 2 kids that you need to deal with, well, gardening can easily get on the back burner, right? And then it's like, let me just give up. Let me just forget about gardening. I'm done with it. Now I can focus on my job, family, so on and so forth. And like Rob had mentioned, like life changes. I had a kid a couple years ago. I have another kid on the way. And actually, by the time this one's posted, I might already have a kid, another one. But things have changed for me. And that's, again, I just want to emphasize what Rob said, the automation that you can bring into it to make things a lot more easier, right? If you're doing automatic watering, then you don't have to go in there and hand water as much. If you can simplify your training approach, well, then you don't have, or grow smaller plants, for example, and simplify your training approach, well, then you don't have to spend as much time in the garden. So there are like shortcuts, and we have episodes on hacks and shortcuts that you can do in order to save time in the garden. To definitely reference that in the future. But burnout, time commitment issues, life changes, moving, people move, right, to different areas. They don't have the ability to grow anymore since laws vary from state to state. They might move to a area where it's not legal for them to grow anymore. So yeah, those things right there are a handful of things that just cause people to quit.
This FTS clip was brought to you by
Definitely don't suggest you move somewhere where it's not going to have cultivation access. We moving to places where we can grow, right? Right.
The evolution, or perhaps the de-evolution of grass. From nature's favorite plant to humanity's frontal cortex scrambler, today we're diving deep into how the za went from balanced foliage to bioengineered potent lettuce, all in the name of science and education. And by the end of this, you'll finally understand why every old head looks at modern za and says, that ain't the Lord's loud boy. It's the Devil's lettuce. What do I mean by that? Well, let me set the scene. The year is 1967. It's the summer of love in San Francisco, California. Thousands of young people are pulling up to the city in hopes of finding inner peace, new music, and an altered state of mind. A group of wide-eyed college kids link up with a guy who, according to legend, is slinging some exotic spiritual third-eye opening Zaza, the true symbol of peace. Enter Charles Zachary III, local Zaza pug. He reaches into his bag and dramatically reveals some oregano-looking greenery. The students lean in, sniff it, and say, oh yes, that's some fine lettuce you got there, sir. They cough up $3, which was actual money back then, and head off to their hippie van to fuel up for their night's hippie drum circle. First day ever, the whole bag gone in one sitting, and guess what? Nobody greened out, nobody had an existential meltdown. Why? Because that so-called exotic was rocking about 1% THC, maybe 2% CBD. Honestly, it was more common than mind-blowing, the original balanced strain. Fast forward to 2025, same scenario, free newbies hop in a Tesla Model Y with a bag of modern exotic, infused 48% T, 0.0001% CBD. You're not getting peace, love, and harmony out of that van, bro. You're getting silence, paranoia, and free people glued to that big, fat, beautiful screen. Now, don't get me wrong, no disrespect to modern za. I love me some stare at the microwave while your hot pocket spins and you question your existence highs, but the problem is, that's basically all we've got left. See, thanks to capitalism and the wonderful cycle of supply and demand, the market did what the market does best. Chase the strongest product possible. People wanted that high T grass, so for the past half century, growers have been selectively breeding for maximum THC. Every new generation of bud got stronger, flashier, louder, and somewhere along the line, CBD, the chill little molecule that used to balance it all out, got completely left behind. The unsung hero of the ZA basically got bred out of existence to the point of you potentially having to go on a nationwide quest just to find a balanced strain. So, how did we get here? Well, it all started at 1960s, the flower power era. Average potency 1 to 2% T, 1 to 2% C. The 1960s were when cannabis first hit mainstream culture, not as a drug, but as a statement. It was rebellion rolled up in paper. The summer of love turned San Francisco into the epicenter of peace signs, guitar solos, and people who thought wearing shoes was a capitalist construct. Grass back then was imported brick buds, mostly from Mexico, Colombia, or Thailand, stuffed with stem seeds and enlightenment. The average potency around 1% T, sometimes stretching to 2 if the stars aligned and your plug had international connections, son. But it wasn't all that weak. It was balanced. There was nearly as much CBD as THC, which kept the high mellow and manageable. You could smoke a whole J talking about ending the Vietnam War and still remember where you parked your van. It wasn't about getting obliterated. It was about expanding consciousness, or at least trying to figure out why your friend had been staring at a lava lamp for 45 minutes. This was the hippies, nature's peace pipe, or by today's standards, basically oregano. But back then, anything you got was the bomb, which these days, people don't just call anything the bomb. You'd have to make something next level, like a nationwide legal gummy that hits twice as fast. Oh yeah, that's exactly where today's sponsor, 5CBD Quick Hits 15 milligram gummies come in. 5 is pushing the limits with innovative nationwide legal Zaza, and their Quick Hits are the latest breakthrough. Unlike regular gummies that can take up to 45 minutes to hit, Quick Hits are formulated for maximum potency and minimum wait time. You'll start to feel it in just 10 to 15 minutes, which also helps to avoid that classic, these Eddies ain't shit. And the best part, if you've never tried them, 5 is giving every new customer the chance to try Quick Hits for free. Already a customer? Returning customers get 50% off. All you have to do is be 21, head to the pinned comment, and check it out. 1970s, hippie hangover. Average potency 2 to 3% T, about 1% C. The flower power dream didn't die overnight. It just got groovier. The 1970s carried the cultural hangover of the 60s, where everyone still preached peace and love, but now they did it when which Pink Floyd album sounded better high. Grass quality improved slightly. People started cultivating locally and importing better strains like Panama Red or Acapulco Golds. Names that sounded luxurious, even though the average potency was still around 2 to 3% THC with a little CBD still floating around. The ZA was social. You pass a J around, everybody got a turn, and nobody coughed like they were dying. You didn't have to warn your friend, take a small hit, bro, this shit's crazy. The worst thing that could happen was zoning out during a record flip or getting too deep in a conversation about the moon landing being fake. In short, grass was still a group experience. The goal wasn't to escape reality, just to make it funnier. Until the 1980s. War on drugs and rise of hydroponic cultivation. Average potency, 3 to 4% T, around 0.5% C. The 1980s.
The 80s is when they started hydro, huh?
The war on drugs. The U.S. government declared an all-out war on drugs, complete with just say no commercials that made it sound like eternal damnation. Ironically, this crackdown made grass stronger. Smugglers got smarter, growers went underground, literally, and indoor cultivation started taking off. Hydroponics, high-pressure sodium lights, and nutrient formulas became the new weapon of peace. Average potency crept up to 3 to 4% T, but CBD started vanishing. The goal shifted. No one cared about balance anymore. They wanted potency that could justify the risk of, going to jail. ZA in the 80s was a statement and a felony. If you were smoking, you were either a rebel or a roadie. The high was still manageable, but definitely sharper. The kind of ZA that made you think your answering machine was talking to you, goddamn. This was the decade where cannabis evolved from hippie habit to countercultural sports, and it took off even more in the 1990s, the chronic era. Average potency 5 to 8% T, usually under 0.3% C. By the 90s, the underground growers growers had perfected their craft. Hydro was booming, genetics from Amsterdam were spreading, and suddenly the world was introduced to names like Northern Lights, Skunk One, and White Widow. Average T levels climbed to around 5 to 8%, which doesn't sound like much now, but back then it hit different. Mostly because CBD had dropped below 0.3%. That balance the 60s had gone. Now it was smoke first, ask questions later. And culturally, this was the chronic era. Dr. Dre turned ZA into a brand, Snoop turned it into a lifestyle, smoking wasn't taboo anymore. It was cool. Blunts replaced J's and people started measuring time in hot boxes. You could still function, but now you felt it. This was the first time people really started greening out. The first time you got that, oh no, I might be too high, man. But it was still mostly chill. You'd just laugh too hard, eat an entire box of cereal and call it night. The 90s were the bridge, the sweet spot before cannabis went full Super Saiyan. The 2000s, Kush takeover, average points 8 to 12% T, usually under 0.2% C. Welcome to the 2000s, the birth of the modern weed economy. OG Kush, AK-47, Blue Dream Sour Diesel strains that became household names. Everybody knew a guy who grew his own, and dispensaries were starting to pop up in California. Average T levels hover between 8 to 12%, and CBD practically extinct. By now, cannabis wasn't just a plant, it was a product. Growers started competing for higher THC numbers because that's what sold. Grass reviews became like wine tastings, notes of citrus, diesel, and mild ego death. This was the decade when people realized weed wasn't the same anymore. The highs were more intense, the paranoia started showing up, and tolerance became a full-time job. You didn't need to smoke a J, one strong hit could send you on a vision quest. It was the golden age of Kush culture. Everyone was high, but somehow also stressed about it. Which that stress kind of started fading in the 2010s, the legalization boom. Average points, see 15 to 20% T, usually under 0.1 C. Then came the 2010s, the green rush. Legalization swept across states, dispensaries exploded, and suddenly weed had branding, merch, and loyalty programs. Average T levels jumped again. 15 to 20% was now considered standard. The CBD in most recreational strains basically non-existent. Growers had bred plants for pure potency, creating buzz that could probably power a small drone. This was when grass science went corporate. You had flower, concentrates, dabs, wax, shatter, live resin, weed so strong it came with its own vocabulary. The line between I'm chillin' and I can feel colors got thinner every year. It was the era of customization, but ironically, almost no one was choosing balance. Everyone wanted the highest T possible, not realizing we basically erased the chill molecule CBD that kept the experience grounded. Which brings us to the 2020s, the Zaza age. Average points, see 25 to 35% T, maybe one lonely CBD molecule floating around. And now we've arrived, the Zaza age, the final form of cannabis, the endgame boss of botany. Weed isn't just strong anymore, it's engineered. Every nug looks like it's grown in a NASA clean room under 24-hour supervision by a dude who calls himself a terpene artist. Dispensary menus, bro, they sound like a fully optioned out car. 28% T, live resin infused keef, dust and solventless Syrahs, and finished 3.5 G of pure enlightenment. Your average flower today clocks in between 25 to 35% T, and that's just your everyday gas station level loud. The real heavy hitters infuse pre-rolls, moon rocks, concentrates, casually push 45 to 80% T, bruh. CBD practically gone. A rounding error in the lab results. The compound that once mellowed the ride got quietly bred out of existence. The MySpace of cannabinoids, forgotten but foundational. And the experience, it's intense. We used to be exclusively about connection, creativity, and relaxation. Now it's about surviving the eddy you thought didn't hit yet. You don't pass around herbal relief anymore. You pass around that loud. But here's the thing. We might not even fully understand how strong ZA has become because everyone's tolerance has skyrocketed. The average daily smoker today could outsmoke an entire 1980s drum circle and still finish a burrito after. Back then, 1J was an event. Now it's a warm-up. So when a casual or first-time user grabs a modern exotic, they're not easing into a mellow buzz, they're entering the quantum realm. And sure, there are still balanced options, CBD forward strains, 1-to-1 hybrids, low T flower, but they're the minority. Most dispensary shelves are designed for one thing only, maximum impact. The louder the better. The industry keeps feeding the same loop. Higher T, lower CBD, stronger hits because that's what sells. Of course, people did get anxious and paranoid from weed back in the day too. That's not new, but the risk was lower. Today with THC concentrations several times higher and CBD nearly absent, the chance of panic attacks, anxiety, or even short-term psychosis is significantly increased, especially for first-timers or people who don't smoke often. It's like the difference between sipping a beer and chugging a bottle of vodka. Technically the same category, but a very different evening. Modern Za doesn't just take you on a trip, it catapults you into orbit and then hands you a mirror halfway up. It's impressive, it's profitable, and it's a little terrifying. The same plant that once fueled Woodstock now also fuels anxiety, Uber Eats orders, and psychological crisis over microwave timers. But hey, who am I to say if we've de-evolved or evolved? Make sure you comment down your opinion below, and until next time, peace!
Give it gas when I'm dipping competition, getting past, living fast, furious, staying on track, never worry when I'm spinning. Last better getting back, ride for my dog, alphabeted on us, you gon' get it back, never split this
Well,
pack.
beat at the beat. I'll be running by there to just drop some comments and some videos, you know. Beat at the beat does videos. Y'all know to go by there and drop y'all some comments too, right? Yes, sir.
While you relaxing, I can, but deep in the pack, the sedan, putting tracks in the sand, pushing my craft at the fan, got the people all clapping their hands, putting cash in my brand, keeping my octane high, my grade premium, not 8-9 or 8-7, and when I run across state line, I'm 9-1, I gun it, clock great time, my time come, disappearing in the dark horizon, way I cut turns, I'm as sharp as diamonds, got them on tilt like a car's alignment, this is raw refinement, not a hard assignment, I'ma give it gas, give it gas.